what I realized when I first started running Guardian Actuarial is that there are actually lots of solo or small actuarial consulting businesses. So, you can make friends with each other and help each other with things. And it's good to have that network as well. So I think understanding why you want to have your own business, establishing some good foundations and outsourcing help where you need it and building your networks.
So hi, Julia. Thanks so much for being here today and become my guest speaker. So first, can you please introduce yourself and share a bit about your background and experiences?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me, V. It's really exciting to be talking to you on the other side of the world because I'm based here in just north of Sydney, Australia, and I know you're in Canada. Yeah. So we're talking across time zones and in different countries. So I grew up in Australia. I've lived in Australia my whole life, currently based just north of Sydney. I am a qualified actuary and I have been running my own business, Guardian Actuarial, for about 8 years now. Prior to that, I had a Big Four consulting actuarial role, and I also, alongside my actuarial qualifications, I have qualifications and experience in counselling and coaching. And so these days I do a lot of training and mentoring and coaching as well as my actuarial consulting. So that's a little bit about me. I've also been married for 25 years and I've got 4 kids who are almost grown now, and I've been a foster carer as well. So, really enjoyed running my actuarial career alongside raising a family.
That's wonderful. For me, that's a great milestone, 25 years and happy marriage, happy life, happy career, everything together. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now let's dive deeper into your actuary's expertise and consulting practice as the Guardian Actuarial. So as the principal actuaries, I'm curious on what your practice or what the different business problem that you try to help to solve.
Yeah, sure. So Guardian Actuarial has evolved over the 8 years that I've been running it. It's kind of got 2 arms. So one arm is the actuarial consulting side, and the other side is the training and leadership side. So the first arm, the consulting arm, we help senior leaders use data to solve complex people-oriented problems. And so that sounds like a fairly vague kind of statement, but essentially people come to us when they need help using data to do something that doesn't fit into another box, or, there's not an obvious person that can solve it. So recently, one example, because we do a lot of work for health and human services and government agencies as well, but quite recently, a local hospital came to us and they said, we don't have a palliative care ward, we don't have a hospice. If people have terminal cancer, they can either die at home or they can die in the cancer ward. But, if they die in the cancer ward, there's all these rules around dying in hospital. They can't have their families or their dogs or, different visiting hours and things. We want to create a space where people can have the comfort that they need in their last days and weeks. And lots of other big hospitals have this, but this hospital didn't because it was a smaller hospital. But there was a lot of community pressure around setting up this ward. And so they came to us and they said, we need to build a business case about this ward because, the government won't fund it unless we can demonstrate that there's enough need. And even if there is enough need, we need to know how many beds we would need in this ward. What's the demand? And so even though that's kind of not something that we would be trained to do as actuaries, it's a problem that actuaries can solve because we were able to have a look at the hospital data. We were able to have a look at deaths data, mortality data. We were able to look at population data. So a combination of data from the hospital, but also publicly available data. And then we could run some scenarios on usage, possible usage, and kind of go through an actuarial thinking process to be able to give the hospital the information that they needed to support their business case. And it was really exciting when they finally opened the ward, because we'd been able to do the maths behind that and to be able to help them with their business case. So that's the kind of work that we do. It's not in financial services mainly. It's usually in different industries that actuaries aren't usually working in. But yeah, some really interesting problems that actuaries are well placed to solve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that example is very interesting. And I totally agree. Like the actuaries, like we are equipped with the right skill set, right? Because it's really about predicting the uncertainty, the supply and the demand in this way. And I recall like, back then when COVID-19 just happened, like we also trying to like, okay, what is the potential, death projections because of this pandemic? And then whether the hospital, there's enough demand or capacity, because that can impact what will be the result coming out of it, right? So,
right.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And it's very interesting. Like, and I'm sure like you have multiple different problems as you work with for multiple industry. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great example too, V, the COVID-19 one, where suddenly we were faced with problems that we hadn't faced before. And so being able to think differently, but draw on what we already know, and use data to drive those solutions as well. I think it's a real strength of actuaries. So, and you can see how we've gotten involved in helping in those areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now let's transitioning into the entrepreneurial side. So I would like to shift our focus to like aspiring actuaries who also aim to open like their own consulting practices, right?
Yep.
So what tips do you have for actuaries who want to open their own practices, like especially based on your experience? What are some key considerations for success or challenges?
Yeah. And I know you're an entrepreneur as well, V, so it's really fun to be talking to another entrepreneur. It's funny because I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. I always thought of myself as an actuary. But when I look back now, I can see how I have evolved and grown a business and grown some new offerings. People, I don't know if they say this to you, but people say to me all the time, oh, it must be so great being your own boss. And yeah, I kind of go, nobody really truly works for themselves. You know, it's just a choice whether you work for a company or you work directly for your customers. So we're always working for someone. So that's the first thing I'd say. The other thing I'd say is that I think being an actuary actually gives us some really good skills to be an entrepreneur and to run a business successfully, because we know how to price things. We know how to put a price tag on things. We also know how to reserve so that we can have enough funds to do things. I mean, they're fundamental pricing and valuation. They're fundamental actuarial skills that we can use to successfully run a business without going broke, without becoming insolvent. But I think that's probably where the analogy kind of stops, or the parallels stop, because I think running a business and being an entrepreneur actually requires a whole lot of other skills as well as that. Skills like being able to sell, being able to market, being able to set a strategy and a direction and sort of follow through. And often if you're a small business entrepreneur like we are, you don't have a lot of people providing input around that. You're not part of a bigger organizational structure that, you know, there's lots of people setting strategy. You've got to kind of do that and wear all the hats. And probably the biggest challenge is just dealing with your own IT, not being able to call the IT when, you know, the computers break or the internet goes down. Outsource that. So I guess my tips would be, you know, make sure you know why you want to run a business. Don't fall for the trap of, I just want to be my own boss or set my own hours or whatever, because I think that's probably not enough of a reason to propel you through the challenges of being an entrepreneur. I think set up really good foundations at the start. So, you know, and get the help that you need with the skills that you don't have. So I do outsource my IT. I've got IT consultants that do all my IT, because it's not worth my time or my stress to try and figure all that out. That's not what I'm good at. And, things like getting legal help. So, just paying for what you need to set everything up, set up your contracts properly, risk manage your business. I guess that's another transferable skill as actuaries. We know how to manage risk. And then I think finally just building your networks. It can be a bit lonely being an entrepreneur or running a small business. But actually what I realized when I first started running Guardian Actuarial is that there are actually lots of solo or small actuarial consulting businesses. So, you can make friends with each other and help each other with things. And it's good to have that network as well. So, building that network. So they're sort of the tips. I think understanding why you want to have your own business, establishing some good foundations and outsourcing help where you need it, and building your networks.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. And I can relate to it a lot, especially with my photography business, right? Right in the beginning when you say that, like, we all have a boss, but it's just like,
yeah, exactly.
who is the boss every single day, and as well as outsource the thing that maybe that's not your core strength, right? So that you can focus your energy into the thing that you are good at and that you can make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Totally relate. So that's why my husband outsourced all of the business aspect to me so that he can focus on
I see.
doing wedding and create art through that.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're also playing to your strengths, and that's important too.
Yeah. So earlier you mentioned that you also tap into like career coaching, executive coaching, leadership development. So that leadership development is definitely a very crucial aspect of professional growth. And I know you also have a podcast about like We Are Actuaries, talking about leadership development too. So first, in your opinion, like what do you think are key qualities or skill that like actuaries should focus on to become effective leaders? And are there any like specific strategy that can help actuaries in that path?
Yeah. I think there's so many things that we can do in that space, but I think the one most common challenge and most powerful skill that we can learn to be better leaders is communication skills. And I mean, you don't have to look too far to find jokes about actuaries and their poor ability to communicate. There's that old joke of the two people being lost in the hot air balloon, and they see a man on the ground and they look down and they say, "Can you help us? We're lost." And he looks up and he says to them, "Oh, yes, you're in a hot air balloon and you're about 200 meters off the ground." And they look down and they go, "You must be an actuary, because you've told us, like, what you've told us is completely true and accurate, but completely useless." And so there's lots of, that's just an example or a joke, I suppose, but there's lots of jokes like that. And I think as actuaries, communication is not just about talking to each other, because we can all do that. I mean, you can speak several languages. So, I mean, that's a communication skill in itself. But I think the challenge for actuaries is being able to communicate the results of our work to different people in a way that they can understand. And not just telling the facts, like the guy in the hot air balloon saying, "Oh, you're in a hot air balloon and you're this far off the ground." I mean, that's true and that's factual. And that's maybe a result of a calculation that he's made, but it's not the useful information for the person who's lost in the hot air balloon. And so I think it's an interesting one, because we do spend so much time learning our maths and our modelling, and we learn how to code, we learn all our technical skills, and we have to do that to become an actuary. But I think what gets missed along the way while we're focused on doing all of that is that we get so tied up in our ability to do that work that we don't have enough time in our education process to learn how to effectively communicate the results of that work in a way that is meaningful for the people that we're communicating it to. And so unless we can do that, it's very hard for us to demonstrate our value and to escalate our careers into leadership roles and to work with non-actuaries and work with the broader business.
Yeah, definitely. And I can see like about that joke is across the continent, I guess.
Absolutely. So
So let's speak more about the leadership development, because I would love to hear about the Guardian Actuarial Leadership Program that you run, right? So what do you think is set it apart from other leadership programs, and how does it benefit emerging actuarial talent?
So the Guardian Actuarial Leadership Program was born after I had been doing a lot of one-on-one mentoring with actuaries, and a client said to me, Julia, do you run a group program so that actuaries can kind of learn these skills together, or, learn some of these basic management skills? Because what I was hearing was pain points. I was hearing that right across the industry, actuaries were finding it challenging to move from being an individual contributor to a people leader. All of those skills that we need to manage people and projects, to be able to delegate, to be able to make sure that high quality technical work is done to a standard that's acceptable when we're not doing it ourselves. That can be a real trick. To be able to manage projects and get things done to certain timelines, to be able to manage uncertainty, to be able to look after ourselves through that process, to be able to manage our time when there's so many things that we have to do once we step into those management roles. So I was hearing that there were common challenges for actuaries in that space, and I'd heard that through my one-on-one mentoring. I'd heard that through my conversations with my corporate clients, and I love the idea of bringing people together. And I think one of the things as we moved into the lockdowns was that we were all working from home. We were still kind of connected with our work colleagues, but we weren't necessarily having the same connection for our professional development as well. We were connecting just to get things done, but we weren't connecting to learn. And one of the tricks, I think, with learning communication skills and management skills is that it's not the kind of thing you can learn from reading a book. Because if it was, we would all be great at it, because as actuaries, most of us are very good at reading from a book or, taking a course. We're doing our solo study. We're learning those skills. We learn how to code on our own. We learn how to build models on our own. It's quiet solo work. But when it comes to communication and management, we can't just read a book and have those skills. We need to practice those skills. We need to work with others. We need time to embed those skills and kind of make them our own as well. It's not just a matter of, I guess, in the same way that our modelling skills evolve over time, we all have our own little ways of building models or bits of code that we like to use to solve problems. And I think it's the same with communication and management. We need time to learn the skills, but we also need time to really make them feel authentic and our own. And a great way to do that is to do that in a group setting, and to do that with other people in a safe space where we can practice our skills, and do that over time as well. Not just go away on a 1 or 2 day course and then come back to work and then just forget it all, but to do it alongside your work over a couple of months and have time to really make those skills your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that, because if reflecting my own career path, like when I was just like writing the exam, even though I'm part of the actual resource program at my company, but the focus was really about passing exam, right? And do well at work, and then you just continue going on that. So if I didn't go to an MBA program afterwards, I probably wouldn't have like the practices, as you say, like working in a group, which is all about like in an MBA. But not everyone want to spend that much time and effort to go through the entire MBA programs for that, right? So I had various reasons to choose it, but I can see like this is very beneficial for like people like actuaries moving from individual contributors to leadership, because like how to delegate, right? When you hit on a point, like we sometimes like we just trust our work, but then how can we trust other people doing the work? Like how can we comfortable delegate? Like that is big part of it to become an effective leader.
Exactly right. And I know you have done your MBA, and it was a big undertaking. It was a lot of time and effort to get through that. How did you manage that with work?
Yeah, so it was for me, it was an online 80% online program with like a few weeks in Spain and then in Silicon Valley. So for me, I guess I treated it as like I passed and I wrote all of those actual exams. So I just have that same mentality, trying to like go through on the MBA courses and stuff. It was intense, and definitely I wouldn't be able to do it without like the support from my families, and then like at a safe space at work where like I wasn't already into the role, so I know things. So and then trying to apply what I learned to work. And I think it's beneficial in terms of like, how you say, you pick up those skills on project management, right? On like time management and those, and in a way you apply it to work. So that is helpful for our work as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So that sounds like that was quite an intense undertaking for you to do your MBA in that way, even though you had the flexibility. And like you said earlier, not everyone wants to invest that much time or can invest that much time in their MBA. And in fact, some of my participants on the Guardian Actuarial Leadership Program who finished the program have described the program as a kind of a mini MBA, because it's run over 3 months. It's about 2 hours a week. So it fits in nicely with your busy workload. Doesn't cost nearly as much as an MBA, but it gives you all of those foundational skills. And it also has the bits that are really important for us as actuaries. Like you said, how do you manage the high quality technical work? How do you delegate work and trust that the person that you've delegated it to, who's probably more junior to you, is still doing good quality work, and that they're not making mistakes, and their work is high quality that you can rely on. So I think that's unique to actuaries, and that's not just about managing to get things done. It's actually managing to professional standards and to high quality professional work as well.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So yeah, I'm very glad that you open those programs so that like to support the next generations of the actuaries. Yeah. So yeah, thanks again for being on my channel today and share on the exciting things about your consulting practices as well as your leadership development program.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's been great chatting with you, V.
Yeah, thank you, Leah.